started. I know y'all want to get off to your Friday afternoons, but thank y'all so much for coming to I think this is our 5th Pro-Con Forum. We have 2 great speakers for y'all today. We have Kendall McCarter from Jackson, Tennessee, and Laura McPhail from right here in Starkville. So y'all give them your attention, and they'll answer some questions at the end. So if you think of anything as they're talking, hold on to it, and we'll do some Q&A at the end. So y'all give them a hand.
Thank you so much for coming today. I know it's Friday, it's after lunch, and I know how I feel when that combination has happened, so thank you for being here. I'll try and keep it up. Like I said, my name is Laura McPhail. I started here at MSU in 1997, and I graduated in 2010. So anybody good at math? Anyone? Clearly I wasn't, but I say that because there's a story there, right? How I've gotten to my point in my career right now has been a very long and winding road. And I won't give you all the horrible, gory details, but what I want you to take away from this at the end is you can do it. You can get past this point in your life, and this is not the end. It is only the beginning of a really great career, okay? So when I started in 97, let me back up from there. When I was a senior in high school in 1997, thinking about graduation and what I was going to do, I was in the marching band, and we were at this big contest that marching bands have, and I got out there and I just felt so awesome, and we did so great, and I thought I had an epiphany that I needed to be a music major. It really felt true at the time. So I started here in music education, which is a great program here at State. But it's not so much when you have really horrible stage fright. At that time, that was true for me. And one of the classes that you have to take that's mandatory for all music majors is recital hour. It's an hour every week. You play in front of your peers a memorized piece of music that's about 10 minutes long with an accompanist, and you get 0 credit hours for it. But you're required to go. So I got pretty tired of that and realized I just can't sit up here in front of people and do this. I love music still, but I needed another way to express myself and to get through school. So when it became clear to me that I was not going to be, go on to be this great concert flautist or anything like that, started thinking, and I looked at the other departments on campus because I wanted to stay here at State, and I looked at the communication department because my mom had always told me that I was her verbal kid and my brother was the emotional kid. And that used to make me mad because I have emotions too, I tell her, and she's like, yes, but you express yours so well where he doesn't. It's like, I'll take that. So I switched to communication in '98 after a year in music. At that time, I was also working at WMSB here on campus, so it was a great merge of my love for music and broadcasting at that time was my track, which, when I look back on it, is a very strange decision because I quit music because I had stage fright, and then I went into broadcasting. But I worked at the radio station where nobody's seeing you do anything, they're just hearing you, and I really enjoyed it and was really good at it. So after a while I decided, I'm looking at the market and I don't think broadcasting is necessarily where I need to be. I keep hearing about this PR track and I really want to give that a try because I really enjoy writing. At the time I had taken some journalism classes too, and I really enjoy putting these pieces together, and PR seemed like the perfect meld of all the different venues of communication that I wanted to be a part of. So I did that for, up until 2003. At that point, 5th year senior, I thought, because I'm great at making really good decisions, right? At this point, we all know this is true of me. At this point, I decided, my grades are not so good. I have stopped going to most of my classes. I have really just kind of not given it what I should have been giving it. And I recognized that I needed some discipline and I needed some direction. I come from a military family, and so that was an avenue that I decided that I was going to explore. So I took off that 5th senior year, just several classes shy of graduating, hopefully, if I had raised my GPA up high enough, hopefully I could graduate. I went into the Air Force instead and spent almost 8 years there as an air traffic controller, which is totally different than public relations, right? But in the Air Force, you have to write because you have to manage subordinates, right? Everybody gets an evaluation, so you have to learn how to write and put things in a very clear and concise manner. One of the tenets of air traffic control is clear and concise communication. So you have to say what you mean right there in the minute and make sure somebody's going to understand it. These all turned out to be very translatable skills when I decided that, okay, I want to finish what I started. I want to go back to state, and I want to finish my degree in communications. I'm ready. I'm disciplined. Let me go. In order to do that, I had to re-enlist so I could get my base of preference and come back to Columbus. And they said, you know what? Nobody has to come to Columbus. You're in. So I went to Columbus, and I had actually the same chief controller that I had had at my previous base. He had moved here before me. And so he said, yeah, come on, and I'll help make sure that you can get into classes. So I got all my little letters of recommendation together from people that I had worked with for the last 8 years and reapplied to get back into school so I could finish. Came here, and what you have to understand about ATC is that you work different shifts every week. Sometimes it's every other day, you're working a different shift. But I was still going to classes that were only meeting in person. So I had to make sure that I kept that discipline of coming into class, doing the reading, doing the homework, doing all the assignments and everything, just to finish what I'd started. And Dr. Flick, does anybody know who Dr. Flick is? Yes. He was my advisor since 1997. And when I came back, he just welcomed me with open arms, sat down in that big office of his with all the sports memorabilia, and he said, let's plan out a path to get you to graduation. So I had 2 semesters left. And with his help, I got there, and I was amazed. I think he was too a little bit, but I really, really enjoyed it because I thought, well, this is something that I feel very comfortable in. I feel like I'm good at this. I've been out in the professional world for a little while. I know how that works, and I know, some of these professional customs and courtesies that will really take you very far in life. But I had some medical stuff come up in the meantime, so I couldn't stay in the Air Force, which is great, right? Because I don't want to be doing air traffic control for the rest of my life. All my friends thought I was very stupid for this because you can make a lot of money doing that. And I was like, no, I'm going to be in PR. So about the same time I got med boarded out of the Air Force is when the grad school that I wanted to go to opened up their first PR program, and their only PR program, because we were the only graduating class out of it before it folded because the person who started it left the university and nobody picked it back up. So I was here at Starkville, moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I was going to go to grad school. And during that time, my dad was living up there working in a different market, and so we were roomies. And it was like I was 16 again, but had responsibility and and I could contribute to the household budget and everything. And while I was going to school at night, I worked during the day because I was living with my dad, and there's not the option of not going to work. So I worked. Then I went and worked at a library where I was the adult program coordinator. So that means I'm asking these people in the community to come and do programs for free for the public to come and attend at a library. And if you don't think you need persuasion skills for something like that, you would be wrong. Because no one wants to work for free or part with their knowledge for free, right? People say they do, but they really, if you could give them an honorarium, that would be great. But it also required some persuasion to get them to come and give a good, informative class without being a self-promotional advertisement for whatever business it was that they were coming from. And getting people to do stuff for free is always difficult, but I actually really excelled at it. Asking, I have figured out in the course of my career that the worst thing anybody can say is no. So you may as well go ahead and ask. You may as well go ahead and try. So I did the adult program stuff. At the same time, our PR person at the library system, she got the job because her dad was mayor way back in the 70s. She never had studied public relations or anything like that, and so she churned out the same stuff over and over again like it was 1983 in those kinds of terms. And so I wasn't getting much attendance at my programs, and I was getting a little ticked off, so I started doing some of my own flyers. And I would draft a press release, because I know how now by going to school here, and would give it to her and say, hey, I saved you some time. If you could just, get this out there, I'd really appreciate it. She didn't really appreciate it, but I did. So about the same time, getting ready to graduate, I am looking at full-time positions, right? Now, Philadelphia is a big, huge job market that is filled with communicators and really good ones. So it's very, very competitive around there. I found a job at a local arboretum because I love outdoors. I love the idea of taking care of our planet and to give something back to the community, right? So most of my work has been in nonprofit. You have to be very persuasive in nonprofit work. Sometimes it's the best tool in your whole toolkit that you'll have. What did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked at this arboretum. Everything was great, except at that time they could only hire me part-time, so I was working 3 jobs to afford to live in the Metro Philly area, which would really, really wear anybody down. That time one of those jobs was teaching some classes at Penn State at one of their satellite campuses. I really enjoyed that too. But after a while, it just was not feasible for me to stay in that area without a full-time job. And I got a call from my hometown, Huntsville, Alabama, where my best friend worked. Your network is another really important tool that you need to maintain through your whole career. Now, my best friend wasn't going anywhere, but she was a great connection for this because she was working at the local library for the whole library system. In Huntsville, there are now 13 branch libraries. At the time when I worked there were 12, and they were looking for a new PR person. In fact, they were starting a whole new department called the Department of Institutional Advancement, and so they had never had a PR person before. They just had a communications person who had worked at a newspaper, for 25 years. So all she knew about was churning out some press releases, and that was it. So I went down there and I interviewed, and I was like, hey, this is my hometown, this is great, I love this library, I came here as a kid, I would love to work here. And they hired me. And I loved it. A few years later, in my network, I have Dr. Ford as one of my connections on Facebook, and I'm just scrolling through my Facebook page and see he's got something on there about, hey guys, don't forget there's this great opportunity at InSpark, Mississippi State. I was like, what's an InSpark? So InSpark is a research center here at MSU. It's off campus, it's on Russell Street, the mill next to new mug shots, and that whole second floor is InSpark. And it was really hard to kind of glean a lot of information from their website then to know exactly what I would be stepping into. But things were not so hot at the library anymore. 3 people in my department had quit, and I was doing the job of 3 people and getting paid for 1. And working at a library does not pay a lot to begin with. So I was looking for other opportunities. This one happened to fall out of the sky into my network. I see it at the right time. I apply. I come for 3 interviews. And here I am as the communications manager at InSpark. So, like I said, long, winding road, many different jobs. I didn't even get into the fact that I worked 2 jobs every semester that I was in school, except for that last one, that was just ATC. But he was asking me questions earlier on this video that I recorded for being an alumni of the department, and he asked me what would I want to tell students if they saw this video. I said I would want to tell them to just keep trying, and even if it's something you're not sure you want to do, if you're thinking about it, it's probably something you should be trying to do. So just keep trying, even if your grades are as horrible as mine were at the time. It's not the end of the world. You can still pick it up and go on and have a fantastic career. If I didn't tell you that I had a really crappy GPA, I don't think you would be able to tell just by looking at me. I would hope not anyway. But when you get out there into the world, into a real job in communications, people aren't going to be able to look at you and know that you were the star pupil or that you were, some mediocre, or maybe you like to party every night. They just want to see what your skills are and what you can do and what kind of person are you going to be to work with. So keep all that in mind. I think you'll have a very successful career if that's the direction you want to go in. And if it's not, that's okay too. Sometimes life throws you a curveball and you change your mind, and that was the path you were supposed to go on. Any questions? Oh, you said wait till the end, right?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Y'all give her a hand. Questions for the end after we hear from a few questions.
Yeah. Great job. It's not easy to stand up and tell your story. Well, I'm Kendall McCarter. I graduated here in 1992. I know. So I'm the old guy in the room, maybe the second oldest. Yeah. Dr. Ford was one of my professors here, one of my favorite people, and it's a privilege to come back, and thank you for inviting me, Liza, to come and speak today. And I guess rather than show a hands of who's here to hear what this, about our careers, who's here for the extra credit? Anybody? Yeah, exactly. That would have been me, because Dr. Ford knows I was not the star pupil in his class, but I did try hard, and I worked hard, and wanted to have a good, solid education when I left here. And my degree was in communication with an emphasis in public relations. So I was a okay writer, but not great. Laura DeFore was my writing teacher, and she could, I promise, use up a box of red pens when she worked on my stuff. But actually, now, in the position I'm in, I'll tell you in a few minutes, I'm actually editing a lot of things, and I use red pens just because that was the way it was for me. But I also want to introduce my wife is here with me today, Sherry McCarter, and I'll tell you how we met, because actually it intertwines with a little bit of my career. But a couple of things I want to ask first. How many of you are seniors here? Raise your hand. Okay, so you're right there. You're thinking about it. How many of you here know exactly what you want to do when you leave? You know, few. That's good. I mean, because I may not be the right story for you, because I was not really sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in PR because I thought it was really cool, and I learned to write, and I loved the idea of working with your publics and stakeholders and everything. But I want to say this: no matter what, when you graduate and it doesn't line up for you just like you hope, don't get discouraged. That's the biggest thing I can give you as a takeaway today. Just don't get discouraged, because I came out in 1992. We were in the beginnings of a recession at that time. That was the first year there were 1 million college graduates. And so the job market was flooded with college graduates, and the economy was not great. So people were downsizing, and every job I applied for, I was competing against people that had 2 to 3 years experience, because they had just gotten downsized. And so my internship that I did at Coca-Cola here in Starkville was great. I learned a lot, but it just didn't compare to 3 years in the workforce. So even though I had an exceptionally good career here at Mississippi State, I mean, I was involved in everything you can be involved in, Roadrunner, fraternities, RHA, all kinds of things that you can be involved in, and a leader at a lot of that. It was still very hard for me. So just the takeaway, you don't be discouraged if it doesn't happen for you right away. And so what happened was I went back. I didn't plan to go back to Jackson, Tennessee, where I grew up, but I did. Ended up back there with my mom and dad, and was interviewing and whatnot, and it just wasn't panning out. So I heard about a position, like an internship at our local Chamber of Commerce in Jackson, Tennessee. And I was like, sure. And they had just some special projects. I wasn't going to make a lot of money. I was going to work part-time. But it was the best thing I ever did. Literally, it changed everything for me. One, because there were lots of contacts that I made in my community. I was immediately thrust amongst some of the business leaders in the community. I got to know them. They got to know me. And I also met my wife there, my future wife, at the Chamber of Commerce. So that was a big deal for me, and those 6 months actually gave me a network that really carried me the first 15 years of my career in the West Tennessee, Jackson and West Tennessee area. After the Chamber of Commerce, I actually was I waited tables for a while. I mean, it was about a 9-month period of time, but I was the most requested server at O'Charlie's in Jackson. If you're going to do it well. And I also worked at the Hertz rental car place, and they told me they had a manager trainee job. I washed cars. That was the part of the manager training position, was to wash the cars. But I was the best wash prep guy they had. Do the best at whatever you're given to do, and it will give you self-pride and self-confidence, no matter how the job may seem beneath you. So my big break for PR was working for an advertising agency in Jackson, Tennessee. They had an advertising department. They did a lot of print advertising, mostly print sales. They did catalogs and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, we need to get us some of that PR money, because they had these clients that wanted all that stuff. So they hired me, and I was the department. And they didn't make me director. They said, we're going to make you assistant director. Oh, there is no director. That'll give us something to promote you to. So I went on one of my first sales calls as a PR guy. Right at, I've been out of school a year and a half or so, and we went to actually a factory here in I don't know if they're still open or not, here in Mississippi. And we drove down from Jackson, Tennessee to Mississippi. And I had my tie and my suit, I had my portfolio, I was ready, I was walking in the door, and the guy that was the marketing manager for this company that makes refrigerated merchandisers. Okay, that's the other thing about PR. You're going to sometimes have to write about the most uninteresting things. I would write about reach-in coolers at convenience stores and why their brand of cooler was better than others. They also made dipping cabinets for Baskin-Robbins and other ice cream places. So when you see the thing they reach down in there where the ice cream is, they made those. It's called Master Built Products. And we walk in the door, and the account executive's with me, and this is my first call. Got my area, I'm ready. He's on the phone. He slams the phone down, immediately jumps on the account executive about how crappy the photography was in his last catalog, and he didn't like it. And it was about this dipping cabinet and this ice cream thing. And he goes, I want some 16-year-old punk dipping ice cream in that picture. And he looks at me and goes, hell, boy, you'll do. And that's my first sales call as a PR executive. And I did actually model for the thing. But it got better from there. From there, I actually worked with a regional airline. I worked for an outdoor products company. Got to do a press conference in Chicago that I did the whole thing. Had the the media there. It was the Chicago Sun-Times. The biggest thing I did during that time, memorable thing, we were on the brink of losing this outdoor power equipment company. They made lawnmowers and snow throwers. They make these machines that take snow and remove them from the sidewalk, kind of like they chop them up and blow them out. It's called a snow thrower. We don't have them around here. But they're big up in Wisconsin where this company is. And we were in a meeting trying to save the account, and the CEO's in there. And he's like, our company president's sitting in there. He's trying to keep the account. He's like, we're going to get you more PR, more news. He says, we're going to get you on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And I'm sitting there, and I look at him, and I went, we're going to do what? And that was what we told him we were going to do. So I go back, start thinking about how I'm going to do what he said. How am I going to deliver? And I did not get them on the Wall Street, in the front page of the Wall Street Journal, but I did get them on the front page, bottom fold of the USA Today. And I felt like I had done something. They called the next day, and they canceled our account. It had nothing to do with me. It was just, they moved on. But anyway, it was a fun, exciting time to be in the advertising agency world, the business. Every time the phone rang, you never knew who it was going to be. It could be a really prominent newspaper outlet. It could be just a trade pub. You know, you just never knew. It was always something different. I worked on all kinds of crazy different clients. But I didn't really enjoy the writing. I was, like I said, I was an okay writer, but I didn't really enjoy it. And we had to write a lot of stuff. And so I ended up leaving that job. And this is why I was going to say sort of things, if you don't know where if you do know what you want to do, then go do that, and that's great. I didn't really know what I was going to do with PR. But I heard about a marketing job at a children's hospital in Memphis. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll apply. In my sort of fly by the seat of my pants, went into the interview, and I didn't really understand it was not a marketing job. It was a fundraising job. But I got it. So that was really how I got into fundraising and nonprofit work, was by accident. But I realized I loved it because it was people, it was interaction, it was relationships, versus what the agency business can be pretty cold. Write your products up, call, pitch the editor. You don't know them, you're probably on the phone, you got 30 seconds. That was a hard life. It was fun, it was exciting, but it was a hard way to make a living. So is fundraising, so is nonprofit. But you're working for a cause, you're working for something that you have passion for. And that really inspired me. That motivated me. And so that's really how I got into what I do now, which is I'm the Chief Development Officer for a nonprofit, which is there's the for-profit world and the nonprofit world. For-profits, obviously, the only difference really that people confuse between a business, a for-profit and not-for-profit, is the profits at the end of the year, if there are any, in a nonprofit, cannot be distributed to the board, whereas they can in a for-profit. That's really the only difference. Any monies that are left over at the end of the year must be reinvested back into the organization. That's a big difference. There's others, but that's the biggest. And so, for me, I have enjoyed that part of a career. I work for a group called the Tennessee Wildlife Federation in Nashville. I basically have a team of people that work for me. I have a grant writer. I have a manager of a development manager who does our database, does all of our annual giving, writes letters to our donors, thank you letters, acknowledgments, whatnot. And then I also have a team of communication we have a director of development who's a PR professional, came from the largest advertising agency in the state, DVL Siegenthaler, but he wanted to change of pace, so he came over to work with us and has been doing great. And then he has a design artist, graphic design artist, and he also has a writer that works for him. So I don't write as much. I might edit a lot more, but I oversee all those things that we talked about in college. I mean, it was the things that I do every day are absolutely what I was taught to do. I just may not be the one doing them. And it's been a very exciting career path for me. I've worked for several large nonprofits, two large nonprofits, one small nonprofit, and I was a vice president of a university in the development department for a while, and I actually had a PR department under me as well. So if you don't know what you're looking for, if you don't know what you want to do, I would really encourage you to look into the nonprofit sector, because you can do all these things that you are taught to do, but you may not do them in just as hard as you would, not hard, but technical as you would in an advertising agency or something like that. So that would be something I would encourage you to think about. If we're going to let you do questions and answers, and I'll be happy to answer more questions about the nonprofit sector and what I do too. So.
Great. Open it up if y'all have questions for either of them specifically or just in general. Y'all have at it.
Yeah. Fire away.
I have a question for both of you. So it sounds like you both kind of had a hand in a little bit of everything, and you mentioned your network is a really great tool to have in your tool bag, but what really set you apart from maybe other applicants or what do you think set you apart from other applicants when you're applying for all these different positions?
Well, so a good resume is just to get you the interview, right? So in the interview, you have the opportunity to really showcase what your strengths are and downplay what your weaknesses are, or your challenges, what you should be working on. These are, calling those things not my weaknesses, because they'll ask you, what's your weakness? I don't want to tell you what my weakness is, so I'm going to tell you what I need to be working on. So, but I mean, honestly, I think what set me apart for most of those interviews that I did, and I've had a lot of jobs, was just being personable, really, being professional and being courteous. I even, when I was in school here, I applied for a job at 96 point whatever. It's Super Talk now, but it's on Stark Road. It was a commercial radio station, and they needed somebody in advertising sales. They always need people in sales for radio. So I went there and I did an interview, and when we were done, and I told him thank you, I stood up and I put my hand out because he was just ready to walk off. I put my hand out and he kind of looked surprised and he shook my hand. He goes, "That's what got you the job." It's like nobody else has done that. And the other thing I would say is tell them you want the job, because a lot of people don't even express that in their cover letter or anything, but if it's something you want, let them know it's something you want.
Thank you.
And I think I would just add that, as she touched on, be authentic, but have energy. Show you have an interest. You've got to be remembered. I mean, I do a lot of hiring now. I do a lot of interviewing, and we had an opening in November for a PR writer, and we had over 80 applicants. So experience is important, and you put that on your resume, and that's what's going to get you called back. But you've got to be remembered. You've got to stand out, and that comes from, especially in a job in the type of careers that you're going to be in, personality matters. You, as a manager, as someone who hires, I want to see how you're going to interact with other people in the office. And it doesn't mean you have to be fakey bubbly. It just means you want to be someone that's going to have some energy, some zip, some enthusiasm. Because if you can't show that in a job interview, it's certainly not going to be there year 2 on a Friday at 4 o'clock. And that's where we're going. It's not just the first impression. It's that long-term thing.
I would say to do your homework, know about the company that you're wanting to work for, and show them that you know that.
Yeah.
If you're showing them all the awesome stuff in your portfolio, say, we could do, I noticed that on your website, you had a brochure, but it had a couple of things that were out of date. So, this is something that I could help you out with.
Yeah.
Show them why they need you.
Thank you.
So I'm a PR major, but I'm also pursuing a minor in marketing. So I kind of have a foot in both worlds. But I guess that's kind of my question for you guys is like, how do you feel like you're accepted? I mean, you've kind of been in the like big business side a little more, and you've been in the nonprofit side too. But how does it feel to be a PR person in kind of a marketer's world in a big business?
Well, I actually would have liked to have done what you did. I really would like to have had the opportunity for a minor in business, because I think that's what is really important when that's what the business experience is, what you're lacking, right? So when you walk in and you understand business a little better, you understand budgeting, you understand some of those things, it helps, right? So what I actually did is I went back and got my master's in business. And that way I felt like I had something else to add to my resume, so that when I came in to a management leadership position, there was no question that I had that. And I also there was a really good job that I wanted to apply for, and it said you must have a master's. And I was like, well, darn it, I'm not going to be excluded for that anymore. That was one of my motivations. But it is, in nonprofits, there's no excuse for not understanding business. And because if you're board of directors, you're going to have a board of directors at your nonprofit, especially. They're business people, and they have I work with some people that have high standards. One of my board members actually sold his company to Warren Buffett. And he reminds me of that all the time. He's like, that money I'm giving you, that's Warren Buffett's money, But, it's just, so if you're going to sell your company to Warren Buffett, you've got to have your ducks in a row. Warren Buffett's the third richest man in the world, or United States at least. So that's certainly important to have. And I think it's smart to get that minor in marketing.
I would agree. I felt like when I graduated from my undergrad program, I still had some time left on my enlistment, and I had used my GI Bill money to do it, so I had time to take classes online and just kind of supplement what I had already earned. And I felt like, honestly, I don't remember if it was I looked around and thought I should probably do this because it'll make me more marketable, or if I was looking around and somebody told me this opportunity was out there. I don't know. But at the time, MSU, I don't know if they still do it or not, at the time, MSU's distance learning department, they had these 9-hour programs that you could do to supplement whatever education, or if you were thinking about going into a particular field, you could take those 9 hours and then they would apply later on. So I took 9 hours of marketing classes to kind of fill in that PR, that circle of the kind of professional that I wanted to be. Because I thought, well, it can't hurt. And he's absolutely right. Knowing the terminology and knowing, just the basics is really, really important, if only because it instills confidence in your board of directors and your trustees that you know what they're about.
Do you guys have any advice for students who have a lot of passion within the PR world and don't really know what to do upon graduation? I care about a lot, but I just don't know which route to take on. So you guys have any advice for that?
Have you done an internship?
I've done a lot, yeah.
Is there any particular one that you enjoyed an aspect of the most?
There were pieces of each one, but I don't think I've found one yet that I just wholeheartedly loved. So that's what I struggle with now, because there's little things in each one that I liked, but not one of them that I was just, I want to do exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you touched on this, but for me, I gravitated towards nonprofit at that time because for me, it's easier for me to communicate and use my voice and, to project out for the entire organization if it's something that I really believe in. And I've only worked at places where it's something that I really believe in that I'm promoting. Because that's part of the ethics of PR, right? You don't want to be promoting something that could be harmful or damaging or anything like that. So I wanted to make sure it would be aligned with my own personal ethics and as a professional. And so that's what drove me into nonprofits, and they're always looking for help in nonprofits. Now, you may not make a whole lot of money at first, but you will get experience being a jack of all trades for a while. And then you'll kind of figure out what your niche is. And then you can specialize, and kind of look for a job that is more aligned with that particular set of things that you like.
Yeah. Nonprofits are really the place where you're going to get the broadest experience quickly, because the resources are not always there to hire a full team. So someone comes in that's new that can do social media, video editing, writing, maybe some editing, Facebook, all those things, is going to get their hands on so many different projects quickly, because typically there's not enough bodies to do the work. And that's exactly why we hired this young person who just graduated from Auburn. She had done an internship at an advertising agency, but she was going to bring so many different things to the table that were not in the job description. I mean, it was just value add. And so we offered her the job over some some people that had 5 years experience, because of what she was going to bring to the table. So, I mean, if you go into work for a corporate environment, it's going to be probably pretty rigid about what you're supposed to do. You're going to stay in your lanes. The nonprofit world's going to give you, so many different, and you can go into events. You can go into, it sounds like I'm making a plug for working in a career nonprofit. But events, online, grant writing, research, communications, newsletters. It's all of it in nonprofit. It's all of it. And it is too in corporate, but it's just corporate's just sometimes a harder gig to get, frankly.
I think too that in nonprofit, sometimes you have to be very creative in how you pool resources and how you spend what you need. My first job in nonprofit at that library, I had a budget for $1,200 for the whole year to run programs off of. Now, the Speakers Bureau would charge a $400 honorarium, so I could have 3 good speakers come in, or I could go out there and go and shake hands and say, hey, you've got something that I think other people would really love to know about, and why don't you come this way. Where I work now at InSpark, it's a very corporate atmosphere, even though it's higher education and it's a research center, because we have millions of dollars worth of grant research going on there. So it is very corporate, and it is very, very different from anywhere else that I've ever worked. I have a graphic designer and I have a technical writer position under me, plus interns. And before, it was always just me, the one-person department, doing everything. So it's good. There are perks to both sides, but if you don't have a budget, you learn really quickly how to, color outside the lines, make a pretty picture.
These are all really good questions. Yeah.
So I think I can speak for a lot of us in here. I know a lot of us are interested in nonprofit, and just people in my classes that I know, me especially, really want to help people and use our skills for good. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is,
I like that. Use our skills for good versus evil. Okay, that's good. That's a good start.
Thank you. Do you ever feel too far removed from the people you're helping? And if you do, how do you cope with that, I guess? Do you ever feel like you're just working with numbers, or you're just working with a website? Does that bother you?
For the nonprofit stuff, not so much, because my job at every nonprofit that I've worked at is to be the storyteller for how whatever the nonprofit is doing impacts real people, real animals, real, fill in the blank. However, ties into your question too, is I also, when I was in grad school, would volunteer my skills with a for-profit business, a small business, who maybe they couldn't afford to hire somebody who knew marketing or PR or anything like that, but they really needed some help because they were stagnating, which was awesome, you know, because I was learning the business side of things too. But there comes a point, this is the removal point, where you start to feel a little taken advantage of, because it's very easy for them to get so happy with your skills that they just ask for more and more and not necessarily realize it. So at a point, after I'd had a couple of years of experience, I had a master's degree, I made the decision that it was time for me to stop giving away my skills for free unless it was something that I wanted to be an active volunteer in, instead of just some person who comes in and does marketing for a couple of days and then walks back out. That's not great for the business either. So I know that wasn't exactly what you asked, but
yeah. And for me, it's same thing. Telling the story, I have to know what we're doing, what we're impacting, and so you kind of have to. I'm at sort of an executive level now, so I don't interface as much at the program level, but I'm around it enough that I think it keeps me going. My last little plug for the nonprofit world: if you get in on the development side, the program side is good too. But if you get in on the development side, which is the fundraising, marketing, special events, that kind of thing, you will meet very interesting people, and you will be with different types of people all the time. And that was kind of what I wanted to be in business, because I wanted to be around people who made things happen. I wanted to be, and that's what I really liked about the advertising the agency I worked in. When I went to the meetings, I went to the senior executive suite every time. That's where I was, either in the CEO's office or the senior vice president of marketing. And I liked being at that level. I liked working at that level. In the work I do in development, philanthropy, I work with those same people. And I get to hear their stories, what made them rich in a lot of ways. And I'm fascinated by that. And of course, I try to work with people who have money, because that's what funds our work. So, you get to meet these people, you get to be in a diverse, one day you may be with someone who is a large landowner and has a lot of wealth that way and is in the timber business or something. The next day you're with someone who is a corporate CEO and ran a company. Or the next day you may be with someone who had their own family business. And then sometimes you just meet with people who inherited a lot of money and they don't really have that, but their family was, owned the governor's mansion and stuff like that. I mean, it's just a very diverse group of people that I get to work with in the nonprofit world, and every day just keeps me going. And I've been doing it now. This is my 22nd year in fundraising in nonprofits, and it just gets better. And you can actually do really well in fundraising, salary-wise. Look at the 990s, which is an IRS form. They're public records of nonprofits, and it'll put the highest paid staff in that 990. It's in the section there, and you can see what people make in fundraising. And there are people at this university that make a lot of money in fundraising and in development, which PR is a perfect avenue to get into that. So that may not be what motivates you, but if you develop the fundraising gift to raise money, to talk to people about investing in something, the persuasion piece, that is a very highly sought after skill. So I'll leave that with you.
Pick up photography too. I was at a nonprofit.
Oh yeah, photography.
I was, doing all the photography, so I got to really zoom in on people's faces and reactions to get that impact for that story. And even with social media, the gatekeeper's gone. I'm the one who's talking directly to, whoever it is, and get to tell that story every time. And get to hear their stories back to help improve how we're doing things. So always listen is what I would leave you with is be just as good of a listener as you feel you are as a PR practitioner. Because listening to that feedback and incorporating it and kind of making changes and doing things better for the betterment of your company, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, that's what you're there for. So make sure you listen.
Thank you. All right, any other questions?
So, both of you have your master's degree. Do you think that working in the field today, it would be better to go on and get a master's degree right after undergraduate? Or do you think it's better to like work in the field a little bit and then go back to school?
I don't think there's any substitute for experience. I'm probably not the best to answer this question because I did have almost 8 years in the working world before I went back to get my master's. But it was right after I graduated, because my story is weird. But the experience that I got in the jobs that I was working in that interim in air traffic control, and I was the squadron booster president, so I was inviting people and doing these special events and stuff and fundraising and all this stuff. It really helped me decide, yes, this is what I want to be doing. And now I want to go and learn more about it, learn more about the theory and how to apply it. So for me, there's no real substitute for experience. Grad school is great, but make sure that it's not just the piece of paper, that it's something that is going to help you get the job that you want.
Yeah, I went back later, and it was hard. I mean, it was 2 years of I went to a cohort type thing, and it was every week, no breaks, projects in between. Funny story, maybe not so much since she's sitting here, but when we had just had our first child, our first child, and it happened to be that the first night of school after we had her, and I'd only been in school a couple weeks, and Julia is an infant, and Sherry is at the door with her mother, and she's crying and yelling at me, "You went back to school just so you wouldn't have to be here with this baby." Well, she was crying, right? And so it was very difficult being married and being gone. So I agree. It helped me to have that experience and that real world, whatever they call it. But it was hard to go back. So if you have the time and the resources, it's probably not a bad thing, but you maybe want to really up your game on what you're doing on the side. Don't just go to school. Go to the Chamber of Commerce and say, I will work on special projects. My wife was a chamber director. If she had a student come in and do stuff like that was good, there is a portfolio winner right there. And you're going to work on special events and all that good stuff, newsletters, etc. So if you have the resources, it might not be a bad thing because it's harder later. But it can be done. And we're still married.